How can we visually see God?
All right, to visually see God, there are many ways through many different spiritual and religious traditions. But I find that the best way to cultivate the ability to see beyond the material plane, to see to greater manifestations of divinity and our true self, is to meditate. You start with about 5 minutes a day of meditation, and I usually meditate cross-legged with my hands resting upon my knees like this, and I have a meditation cushion usually, and my back has to be straight, and my breathing has to be even and fairly as slow as you can do without being uncomfortable. When you first start meditating, you just want to try and quiet all your thoughts. You just kind of want to bring everything down so that there is an absence of mental chatter as much as you can. Now, it's going to be hard to quiet all your thoughts down initially, but the more you do it, the more you'll find that you can create this emptiness that expands in your brain. You visually have to, not visually, but physically try and feel and imagine this expansion, this emptiness in your brain kind of pushing everything out. And if thoughts come in, don't get mad at yourself or try to push them out aggressively. Just try to allow them to pass. Just allow them to pass. And if you do this for about 5 minutes every day, that is a good foundation for meditation. Then you can go on to visualization and start imagining certain symbols with light, or certain gods or spirits that are significant to you. But I'd highly recommend starting off meditation for just 5 minutes a day for a few weeks, and just allowing this expansion in your mind to push out all this chatter that we usually have in our brains. Now, to visually see God, there are other things that you can do besides meditation. Of course, eventually you reach a point where you'll be able to really feel and see God, at least in a way, in your mind's eye during meditation. And usually you want to keep your eyes a little bit open, but usually in the West, and I do this too, I keep them completely closed. Now, when we put our physical body through a lot of kind of very physical, active prayer, I guess you could say, whether it's on your knees with your hands like this, or you're on one knee with your hands like this, or you're cross-legged, and you're really focusing on keeping your hands together, but also allowing this light to expand between them, and trying to create allow an image of God to form kind of in this light that's expanding out through your hands, and visualize God. Just allow it to happen, though. Don't force it. Don't try to put it in your mind's eye. Allow it to happen. And this is really a great form for your hands to be when you're trying to focus, when you're trying to create a connection to the divine. Your hands being like this is a great focusing tool. And when you're praying with your hands like this, and you're allowing light to kind of expand from your hands, and that requires visualization, you will reach a point where your image of God will kind of just naturally come before your eyes. But it takes a lot of practice, a lot. It's not something that's going to happen after 3 times trying it, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks trying this technique. And it might even take 6 months to a year. But if you just try this for 5 to 10 minutes every day, however you want to sit, however you feel more supplicated to God, however you feel more honoring of God, then you'll develop your own techniques beyond that I don't really have to share with you. Now, there are other ways to see God, as far as chanting certain mantras or saying certain prayers. Many times is good, but a certain amount of times. There's specific numbers that allow you to see certain forms of God, based on whatever you're looking for. Now, God is vast and infinite, so there are many ways to appeal to the different functions of God and the different pieces of God, so that you see that particular one that you identify with most. Otherwise, God is simply just infinite light. There are, of course, I wouldn't recommend taking hallucinogens or acid, or like shrooms, or smoking weed to the point where you try to see something. That is more of altering your brain chemistry to the point that it shifts its perspective, it shifts its what it sees, and kind of forms it in ways that we just can't predict. Now, to visually see God, as far as without closing your eyes or anything like that, there are walking meditations where you try to trace the form of plants and animals and people, and try to see all these things as one. And you might eventually, if you walk and focus on the different lines being as one thing for long enough, and you have the physical exertion that you're putting yourself through, maybe even running, lifting weights, but you're focusing on the lines of everything being the same thing. These lines start to slowly disappear. This is a practice you have to do quite a bit, and it becomes this one image that a lot of the time you don't plan for. But those are all the ways that I would go over right now as far as how to visually see God. But we'll go ahead and end the question there, and we'll go on to the next one. All right, Frank, go ahead and ask your question.
All right, so give us some reasons and beliefs for being a vegetarian and how you think that has helped society.
Okay, so for me personally, being a vegetarian has been a great move as far as the direction of my life. Being a vegetarian has allowed me to focus in ways that I never imagined I could. It's very strange. I didn't anticipate being able to focus, to have less mental agitation, to focus, to be able to turn my life in a direction just by nutrition, by what I eat, and allow it to actually affect me mentally to the extent that it has. I believe that the reason I have less agitation and I'm able to focus more is that I don't have the chemicals that are produced when an animal is slaughtered. It produces certain chemicals based on fear because of that fear. And when those chemicals are basically consumed by us, it doesn't translate directly into our own brain's biochemistry, but it does have an impact on it. And based on some research, recent research, I believe that, but also just from the experience of actually having these improvements mentally after I became a vegetarian. And, you know, even my ideology has changed in that I believe in cruelty in different ways. I don't have the ideas about when one should be violent to the extent that I used to have. I used to believe that one should basically protect themselves and basically just destroy anybody who comes at them and not have any compassion or mercy. And now this change in ideology is directly, well, almost directly due to the biochemistry of my brain now, is that I have less desire for cruelty, to be violent even if somebody wrongs me. There's less desire to be violent. Now, how does this help society? I mean, the violence thing is obvious, but another way that this helps society is that in 2011, the UN basically said that the greenhouse gas emissions produced by livestock accounted for 39% of the greenhouse gas emissions, which basically means that our consumption of meat, so like beef and pork and other livestock, is literally causing global warming at an increased pace. And because of that, we are actually bringing ourselves to a point where our climate is changing in response to our eating habits, which is crazy, but it happens to be the truth. And just a little bit more information about beef itself. 1 pound of beef requires many gallons of water. I don't have the exact numbers, but far more gallons of water and actually corn to feed the cow itself. Just to produce one pound of beef, it takes many gallons of water, many pounds of corn to just produce this 1 pound of beef, just because we want to eat meat. And this adds up over time. And because of that, the amount of corn that we feed to livestock could literally solve world hunger just by not eating beef anymore. We could still eat pork. I mean, I don't eat pork, and I wouldn't advise it, and it's still a problem to our environment and to our society and to our biochemistry. But just not eating beef actually would allow us to solve world hunger. The price of food would go down. The amount of food we can send out would be far greater, and more of what we produce agriculturally and not through livestock would allow to be eaten by human beings, and we wouldn't need the forced breeding and production of meat that we have right now. And it is forced breeding. It's not about killing off cows. It's about not forced breeding, but also not putting them into circumstances in which there's vast amounts of them and it causes them pain. So the pain of animals is a very big factor as to why I'm vegetarian, but it's not the only factor. I've basically told you the most practical factors first, but the pain that these animals go through is ridiculous. I mean, they live in mud. They're lined up and killed, and they see their families dying. And a lot of you might not care about animals necessarily in this way, but to reduce the amount of pain in the world, even for animals, is a very big positive factor for the development of human consciousness and for morality itself. But okay, we're going to end this segment here, and then we're going to go to the next question. All right, Frank, go ahead and ask your question.
So how do you not judge people for having different beliefs?
All right, now, as human beings, we have a variety of different beliefs. We have ideas of God and basically the world that are very close to our heart. We tend to attach to these beliefs and become very emotional about whatever we believe. We can still believe something without being attached and emotional about it. But even if we are very much emotional and attached, then we can respect people by allowing them to speak, of course, and also not judge them, because to judge somebody is basically putting you in the seat of whatever your idea of God is. So whatever your idea of God is, you're basically saying, okay, I get to judge you because I feel my belief is superior. But believing your belief is superior doesn't necessarily make it the case. Even if you're certain that you're right, that doesn't necessarily make you right. Everything that I could believe could be false, even though I'm certain. Just because I am certain doesn't mean that I know the nature of reality. The reality is something that we're all trying to figure out. And even if somebody, let's say, is right, and they're talking to somebody who isn't, then you can still not judge them, not put yourself in the seat of highest authority and look down on them as someone who comes from a position of supposed superiority. Now, if you're Christian, for instance, and you're sure that you're right, and maybe you are. I don't know anything ultimately, personally, even though I'm Hindu. I don't know anything. And you're talking to a Muslim person, and they respond with a completely different set of beliefs. You can disagree, you can discuss, you don't have to argue, you can discuss, you can share thoughts, and you can try and work out a communication in which there's a channel both to and from. You're listening and you're speaking, not just speaking and expecting everybody to agree with you. Now, to judge, let's say, from a Muslim point of view, to judge the Christian, or from a Christian point of view, to judge the Muslim, is to take up the position that you are God. That you're saying that you have the authority because of what you believe to judge somebody, when only God has an authority, according to both traditions. Now, if I'm Hindu, so if I'm approaching somebody in, let's say Islam, then I of course disagree on many different fronts, on many different ideologies. But I don't judge them, because I ultimately don't know that I'm right, but also I don't think that just because my beliefs are right, and I think that they are, obviously, that doesn't mean that I am and should be in a position to say their worth, to exclaim that they are wrong and thus they are going to go to a worse place. I don't have the authority to say, since my beliefs are better, I am a better person. I don't put myself in that seat of authority. I leave that to the universe and to God, because that isn't my place. My place is to try and understand the best that I can and try to get as close to God as I can, based on what I've learned and what I try to see in the world, and try to see the connections, and try to realize the true essence of the soul and the self, that is in which everyone is connected. No matter if you're animal, plant, human, it doesn't matter. We're all connected. And I try and see that, and not try to force my supposed authority onto somebody else just because I'm so-called right. But anyway, I guess, does that answer the question? Okay, good. All right, well, we'll go ahead and end it there. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up down there. If you want to comment, you agree, you disagree, you have something to say, feel free to shoot down there in the comment section below, and I will see you in the future.